He utterly despised Jerry Seinfeld, and for decades, no one really knew why. Johnny Carson, the undisputed king of late-night television, ruled America's living rooms for 30 years. His smile could combination, his timing could make or break a career, and his simple nod to the couch beside him could turn a struggling comic into an overnight sensation. From Robin Williams to Joan Rivers, Carson was the gatekeeper of comedy itself. But there was one name he never truly welcomed. One man whose success he refused to celebrate, Jerry Seinfeld. Carson's silence spoke louder than words. Seinfeld had become one of the most successful comedians in history, adored by millions showered in wealth, and credited with creating one of the greatest sitcoms ever made. Yet Johnny Carson, the man every comedian once dreamed of impressing, wanted nothing to do with him. Why? Was it jealousy? A generational divide? Or something far darker buried beneath Hollywood's polished surface? Today, we're peeling back the curtain on an unspoken feud that shaped the soul of American comedy. A clash not just between two men, but between two eras, two philosophies, and two very different definitions of what it means to be funny. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Stay with me. Because the truth behind this silent Cold War is more unsettling and more revealing than anyone ever expected. In 1993, Jerry Seinfeld was at the height of his fame. Seinfeld dominated Thursday nights on NBC, drawing millions of viewers and redefining sitcoms for a new generation. At 38 years old, Seinfeld had it all: money, power, and near-universal adoration. And then, out of nowhere, came a story that left even Hollywood speechless. One afternoon in Central Park, Seinfeld met a 17-year-old high school student named Shosan Alonstein, a senior at New York's elite Dalton School. The two struck up a friendship that soon blossomed into something more. Paparazzi photos of them together, holding hands, kissing, laughing, began circulating almost immediately. Seinfeld insisted they were just friends until her 18th birthday. But few believed that. The public was uneasy, and industry insiders whispered that this wasn't just odd, it was unacceptable. And no one felt that more deeply than Johnny Carson. Carson, then nearing 70 and long considered the moral compass of late-night television, reportedly found the entire situation beyond the pale. To him, the relationship didn't just raise eyebrows, it broke an unspoken code. Johnny came from an era where a performer's reputation mattered, recalled one longtime Tonight Show producer. He believed entertainers represented something bigger, a kind of class, a trust with the audience. To him, a grown man dating a teenager wasn't edgy. It was disgraceful. Inside the Tonight Show offices, Carson quietly ordered that Seinfeld's relationship never be mentioned in jokes or monologues. When one of his writers slipped in a reference and the joke bombed, Johnny cut it instantly. "Take it out," he told them. "We don't need that kind of cheap attention." Mainstream media couldn't resist. People magazine ran a pointed cover story titled "The Graduate," comparing Seinfeld to the older seducer from the classic film. Newsweek questioned why one of television's most successful men would pursue someone so young. To the public, it was gossip. To Carson, it was a revelation, and not a good one. For the man who believed comedy and character were inseparable, Seinfeld's behavior confirmed what he'd quietly suspected. The so-called comedian of the decade lacked something essential: dignity. Behind the microphone and the witty observations, Jerry Seinfeld cultivated an image of effortless charm. But those who worked with him painted a very different picture, one of cool detachment and emotional distance. He was polite, one Tonight Show staffer later admitted, but you never felt warmth. He didn't ask about people, didn't hang around. He just did his thing and left. Carson, on the other hand, was legendary for his empathy. He learned the names of crew members, remembered their birthdays, asked about their families. His kindness wasn't performative, it was instinctive. Johnny came from a world where kindness was professionalism. Seinfeld came from a world where indifference was power. That difference didn't go unnoticed. During Seinfeld's appearances on The Tonight Show, Crew members could sense the cold energy between them. Johnny was courteous but distant. The man who had welcomed hundreds of comedians to the couch never extended that invitation to Jerry. Johnny liked comedians who could laugh at themselves, recalled a former Tonight Show writer. He valued humility as much as timing. Jerry had the timing, but not the humility. The tension only deepened after one industry roundtable, where Seinfeld dismissed other comics, including Carson favorites like Letterman and Leno, for trying too hard to connect with audiences. The remark got a laugh in the room, but those who knew Johnny saw his jaw tighten. For Carson, that wasn't comedy, it was arrogance. He had built his empire on connection. To him, mocking fellow comedians wasn't wit, it was weakness disguised as confidence. By the late 1990s, Jerry Seinfeld had become one of the wealthiest entertainers on Earth. Seinfeld reruns made him over $100 million a year, and his luxury car collection, over 100 Porsches, became a pop culture obsession. His success was astronomical, and he didn't hide it. He joked about it. He built entire shows around it. He lived it. Johnny Carson, meanwhile, had quietly retired to Malibu. Despite being one of the richest men in television history, he lived modestly, avoided interviews, and rarely spoke about money. He drove nice cars and lived well, said his producer Peter Lost Sally, but you'd never hear him brag. He found that kind of talk tasteless. Carson once told a writer, "You don't get funnier when your garage gets bigger." It wasn't a quip, it was a creed. Johnny believed comedy came from real life, from struggle and human truth. Once you insulated yourself with wealth, you lost touch with the very people you were trying to make laugh. So, when he saw Seinfeld celebrating his fortune and flaunting it as part of his public identity, Carson was reportedly appalled. In his eyes, Seinfeld wasn't evolving comedy, he was commercializing it, turning authenticity into branding. The audience can smell it. Carson once told Ed McMahon, "The moment you lose touch with real life, you stop being funny. You're just rich." To Carson, Seinfeld had crossed that invisible line, the one separating artists from products. For 3 decades, Johnny Carson had perfected the art of a late-night talk show, the monologue, the desk, the couch, the easy conversation that made America feel at home. His format became the standard for everyone who followed. Letterman, Leno, Fallon, Kimmel, all borrowed from Carson's playbook. So, when Jerry Seinfeld launched comedians in Cars Getting Coffee in 2012 and positioned it as an authentic alternative to talk shows, it wasn't just creative marketing. It was a dig. "I don't want to fake interest in actors or pretend to be enthusiastic about their movies," Seinfeld said in interviews. "That's why this is the only show worth doing. It's real." He didn't name Carson, but everyone in the industry knew what he meant. To Johnny, that comment cut deep. The man who had built the very platform that made Seinfeld famous was now dismissing it as phony, as irrelevant. Johnny felt betrayed. One NBC insider later revealed, here was this guy who got his big break on The Tonight Show, now acting like that whole era of television was beneath him. Carson's response was characteristically understated, but sharp as ever. Without talk shows, he reportedly quipped, Jerry would still be performing in pizza parlors on Long Island. For a man known for his restraint, that one line said everything. Carson loved comedians who bled on stage, who turned pain into security and truth into laughter. He adored Richard Pryor for his raw honesty, George Carlin for his intellect, Robin Williams for his chaos and vulnerability. They didn't just make people laugh, they made people feel. Jerry Seinfeld took the opposite route. He prided himself on avoiding emotion, politics, or personal confession. "I'm not interested in feelings," he once said. "I'm interested in funny." Technically brilliant? Absolutely. Emotionally resonant? Not at all. Carson respected Jerry's craftsmanship, but found his work hollow. "He makes you laugh," Johnny reportedly told a friend, "but not think." To Carson, that was the difference between a comedian and a comic. A comedian told the truth and found humor in it. A comic just told jokes. Carson, who had endured heartbreak, divorce, and the death of his son, believed laughter was a way through pain, not an escape from it. Seinfeld's show about nothing seemed to represent exactly what Carson feared comedy might become: clever, profitable, and emotionally vacant. Before his death in 2005, Johnny Carson rarely spoke publicly about comedians. But when he did, one name stood out: Norm Macdonald. He once told a close friend, "Norm's the only one who reminds me of myself." It was the highest praise Johnny could give. Norm's humor was fearless, awkward, and brilliantly deadpan. Comedy that could bomb spectacularly or soar to genius, depending on the audience. Carson admired that risk. To him, Norm represented the courage to stay true to one's voice, even when it didn't please the crowd. Years later, when Norm died after a long private battle with cancer, tributes poured in from every corner of comedy, except one. Jerry Seinfeld stayed silent. No tweet, no interview, no acknowledgement, nothing. For many in the comedy world, that silence was deafening. If Johnny had been alive, one veteran comedian said, that silence would have confirmed everything he already believed about Jerry. It wasn't about friendship. It was about respect. Carson believed you could judge a comedian's character by how they spoke about other comedians. Seinfeld's silence spoke volumes, not in words, but in what it implied: indifference. The rift between Johnny Carson and Jerry Seinfeld wasn't just personal. It symbolized the cultural shift from the world Carson built to the one Seinfeld inherited. Carson represented the age of shared experience, when the whole country watched the same show, laughed at the same jokes, and trusted their host to reflect a bit of their own humanity back at them. Seinfeld embodied the new age of narrowcasting: irony, detachment, self-referential humor, and success measured in syndication checks rather than connection. Carson believed fame carried responsibility to the audience, to the craft, to your peers. Seinfeld believed success was its own justification. Both men were masters of timing. Both reshaped television, but Carson gave America warmth, while Seinfeld gave it mirrors. And in those mirrors, Carson saw a comedy world that no longer needed heart, only punchlines. Johnny Carson once said, "There are comedians who make you laugh until you cry, and those who make you laugh until you think. The great ones do both." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm still waiting for Jerry to make me think." Maybe that's the real story. Two men at the top of their fields, one who believed laughter should bring people together, and another who believed laughter was enough by itself. Carson's legacy is warmth, empathy, and decency. A reminder that humor at its best connects us. Seinfeld's is precision, detachment, and technical mastery. Proof that comedy can exist without ever revealing the man behind it. And so, decades later, we're still left with the same question Johnny once faced in silence. What matters more, the laughter itself or the humanity behind it? If you've ever wondered how two of comedy's greatest minds could stand on the same stage, yet live in completely different worlds, perhaps the answer lies not in fame, but in what each man valued most. For Johnny Carson, comedy was a bridge. For Jerry Seinfeld, it was a spotlight. And sometimes the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows.